Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Put the kettle on, make yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and let's talk some boxing. Now, there has been a back and forth between Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury. Of course, Ngannou does want to cross over to the boxing ring, and at the moment he is heavyweight champion in the UFC, but Tyson Fury is heavyweight champion in boxing. Is there a possibility that Ngannou could cross over? Well, that seems to be becoming a little bit more likely. Dillon said he would be open to fighting Ngannou, one in UFC, one in boxing, but it seems like it's Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury that Ngannou has his sights set on. So what does he want to do, just have one fight in boxing and go straight to the champion? That is the big question. Is he able to do that? I mean, does he not need time to develop? That is the question also. I don't think that Ngannou stands much of a chance in there with Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, and he seems to believe that he does, but Tyson Fury said that he would roast him in a single round. Ngannou did express his interest in crossing over to boxing and fighting specifically Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, but it is Tyson Fury who's got his back up about Ngannou calling him out. Now, Tyson Fury actually tagged Mike Tyson in the post because there's a picture of Ngannou and Mike Tyson together, and he said, "At Mike Tyson, after I smash Anthony Joshua, I'll roast that guy also. Francis Ngannou." So then Ngannou did come back and posted a picture of Tyson Fury after his win over Otto Wallin, and obviously he had that cut, and that was a brutal fight in some ways for Tyson Fury. Even though he still won quite comfortably on the scorecards, it was a difficult fight because he had a bad cut. But this is what he said in response: "If this guy did this to you, what do you think I would do?" So he's kind of playing on the fact that Tyson Fury had a difficult fight against a pro boxer, but Tyson Fury wasn't at his best in that fight, and even that Tyson Fury from the Otto Wallin fight would still easily beat Francis Ngannou. No disrespect, it's a completely different sport to UFC. I just think that if these two got in the ring, Francis Ngannou would be chasing shadows the entire fight for however long it lasted. I don't necessarily believe that Tyson Fury would knock him out, as in he goes down for 10. I think that it would just get too much and he would end up being stopped. I don't know if he'll be knocked out, but he'll definitely be stopped by Tyson Fury because I just don't think he has the fundamentals to stick in there with an elite level heavyweight. Let's remember the levels in boxing and UFC. Look at the level Tyson Fury is competing at, then imagine Francis Ngannou crossing over and even trying to beat someone like Andy Ruiz, someone who's around world level. Tyson Fury is a level above Andy Ruiz Jr., so you can see how difficult it would be for him to cross over to boxing and make any kind of impact. You know what, actually, there is one name that seems to not be mentioned alongside Ngannou. There is Dillon, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, but what about Deontay Wilder? Now that's a little bit more interesting because Wilder is looking for a fight and Ngannou wants to cross over to boxing. I know that there's no world championship on the line, but what is the likelihood of Ngannou getting a world title shot in his first boxing match? Quite unlikely. And what is the likelihood of him beating Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury? Quite slim. But Wilder's different. He doesn't have the boxing ability, say Anthony Joshua does, or Tyson Fury. We've seen that in the ring when he fought Tyson Fury. So that's a better matchup. It's a risky fight for Ngannou because Deontay Wilder punches so hard, but then again so does Ngannou. So I think that that could match up for a better fight than Ngannou crossing over to boxing, going straight for the champions, because I just don't see him getting a world title opportunity. I mean, there are bigger fish for Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to fry. Undisputed twice this year, and there are other fighters as well. Dillon, Andy Ruiz, Joe Parker. There are many names. Usyk as well is in there. Joe Joyce. So there are some big names they can face. Ngannou is going to find it difficult to make himself one of those names. One way he can do it is fight someone like Deontay Wilder. I believe that that should be the matchup, actually. I'm quite interested in that one because you have two big power punchers, and realistically, what is going to happen? Someone's going to get stopped. That fight would not go the distance. Two fighters who have limited boxing ability, and they would just go in there and go blow for blow. I think Ngannou could have a chance of winning that fight if he was able to land. Having said that, Wilder would still be the favourite, but that fight does make way more sense than Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. I mean, he could face someone in the top 20, then gauge his ability, but going straight for the champion isn't going to be all that good for Francis Ngannou. And again, does he even warrant a fight with Tyson Fury? And Tyson Fury did even say in response to those comments about the Otto Wallin fight and that picture of him, look at what this guy done to you, imagine what I will do. Tyson Fury simply said, I would smash you in 1 round. Now, I'm not sure if it would be in 1 round, but I do believe that that would definitely happen. I think that Anthony Joshua beats him, I think that Tyson Fury beats him, I think that even Dillon White beats him in a boxing ring. Dillon White going over to the UFC is something different because obviously he's going into Ngannou's territory then, so it's a little bit different, but I believe that in some ways it can be easier, depending on the opponent, to go over to UFC than it is for a UFC fighter to come over to boxing. It's easier for a boxer to go over only if the fighter in the UFC is someone similar to Ngannou, who is more of a stand-up fighter. That does give a boxer more of a chance, but still, the UFC fighter is always going to be the heavy favourite. A UFC fighter coming over to boxing, they have certain things taken away, like no leg kicks and no groundwork or anything like that, whereas in boxing you get given more things to be able to do, more tools are given to the fighter going into the octagon. So I do believe that a UFC fighter would smash a boxer going over, especially someone like Ngannou. He is heavyweight champion after all, but I still believe that a boxer would have a little bit more of a chance going over to UFC than he would coming over to boxing. It would be an interesting fight, but this isn't a fight that's going to get any traction really at the moment, especially considering Tyson Fury is looking to go into a fight with Anthony Joshua. I believe that if Ngannou is going to fight a boxer, a big name as well, then it will be Dillon White. Because I just think that Dillon White is in that situation where he needs a fight, he would be interested in going over to UFC and also having a fight. So giving Ngannou the opportunity to fight him both in the boxing ring and in the octagon. So that seems more plausible at the moment because Dillon White also doesn't have a fight lined up. He is going to be WBC mandatory in 2022 because he is WBC interim world champion. So that does mean that he'll get his world title opportunity in due course. But in 2021, that is not going to happen due to Undisputed happening and having all of the belts tied up with that fight. With that being said, let's move on and talk about Conor Benn and Amir Khan. Obviously, Amir Khan said that this fight doesn't make any sense to him because there is no world championship on the line. So what does he really gain by beating or even fighting Conor Benn? This is what Conor Benn had to say in response. Amir Khan is someone I look up to, someone who has achieved everything I want to achieve in the sport, but I would like to beat him and gain his experience. I'd like to send him out into retirement nicely, as nice as possible anyway. So there we go, that is Conor Benn's response to Amir Khan, saying that he's not really interested in fighting him, because actually Amir Khan did say something else. He said that when he was Conor Benn's age, he was world champion, and he said that he has progressed quickly in the sport and achieved a lot. So that was kind of Conor Benn's response to that, and that's fair enough. Amir Khan is in a situation where he has maybe one more fight, or he does believe he has one more fight, so he does need to pick that wisely. You would believe that his best fight would be Kell Brook, but we still don't know if that is going to happen. I don't really see the angle from Amir Khan at the moment. He's not going to fight Terence Crawford again. He's not going to fight Ugas, I wouldn't imagine. He's not getting an Errol Spence fight because what does Errol Spence gain from fighting Amir Khan? He has got other fighters that he can face, bigger names as well. Well, maybe not bigger names, but bigger fish to fry. Names that he would get credit for beating, because he's not going to get much credit for beating Amir Khan at this stage. So Amir Khan does want to remain in the sport, but the big question is why? What is there still out there for him to prove? Does he drop down a weight? Because in the welterweight division, even outside of the champions, there are some great fighters coming through, like say Conor Benn himself, like also Jaron Ennis. So there are many fighters around there, but again, what does Amir Khan even gain by fighting those guys? Does he move up? I think he's too small for junior middleweight. Does he move down? He ain't making 140 anymore. So it's a difficult situation for Amir Khan, especially considering he maintains that he wants to remain in the sport for maybe 1 more year or 2 years, have 1 or 2 more fights. And when you look at the landscape in the welterweight division, what other fight is there for Amir Khan aside from the Kell Brook fight? Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Pick your favourite subject and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks, guys.